Most people wouldn't dare break down outside a biker bar, but Tom Bailey didn't choose where his old bicycle gave up. At 70, the Vietnam veteran had learned to survive everything from war zones to chronic health problems. So when the chain snapped and he coasted to a stop right in front of the infamous Iron Talons clubhouse, he did what he always did, kept his head down and handled it. Tom never asked for help. With trembling hands and a rusty multi-tool, he knelt beside his battered bike, ignoring the sneers from leather-clad bikers lounging on the patio. Laughter echoed around him. Someone pulled out a phone. "This'll go viral," a voice joked. But Tom stayed calm, decades of discipline, telling him that dignity is something you never surrender. Just as a grocery bag tipped over and cans rolled toward the jeering crowd, the bar door creaked open. A giant of a man stepped out, Derek Diesel Morgan, founder and president of the Iron Talons. The laughter stopped. Without a word, Diesel lifted the bicycle, inspected the chain, and growled, "You coming or not?" Tom hesitated, then followed him inside. Within minutes, every biker in the bar stood up not to laugh, but to help. They cleaned, replaced, repaired. A Marine Corps emblem was added to the front fender, and when the bike was done, Diesel handed Tom a leather vest not with the club name, but a single stitched word: respect. In that moment, Tom wasn't just a broken old man, he was a brother in arms. And everyone finally saw it. When Rick Dawson's bicycle broke down in front of the toughest biker bar in town, no one expected what would happen next, least of all Rick himself. At 70, he had survived the heat of war, the quiet battles of aging, and now, a snapped bike chain in the most unfriendly place imaginable, the Iron Talons clubhouse. As laughter erupted from the leather-jacketed bikers, Rick knelt beside his bike in silence. His fingers fumbled with the rusted tool, groceries scattered on the pavement, but he didn't meet their eyes. To them, he was just an old man in a faded veteran cap, an easy target for mockery. But to Rick, this was just another test of patience, another moment to endure. And then the unexpected happened. The bar's doors swung open, and Derek Diesel Morgan, the club's president, stepped out. The mood changed instantly. Without speaking, Diesel picked up the broken bike and wheeled it inside. "Bring tools," he told his crew. Within minutes, what began as humiliation transformed into something deeper. The bikers fixed Rick's bike with care and precision, some even leaving to buy new tires. At the end, Diesel handed Rick a custom vest with just one word: respect. Rick didn't ask for it. He didn't need it. But in that moment, surrounded by roaring engines and silent nods, he received the recognition that had been missing for years, not as a favor, but as something truly earned. As the patched-up bike sat proudly on the pool table inside the bar, Rick Dawson stood quietly to the side, his weathered hands still trembling, not from age alone, but from the weight of what was unfolding before him. Just moments ago, this place had been full of laughter at his expense. Now, every member of the Iron Talons was working with silent focus to restore a stranger's bicycle as if it were sacred. Then came a moment no one could have predicted. Diesel, the club president, walked over and reached toward Rick's collar. Startled, Rick stiffened until he realized Diesel was gently lifting the dog tags hidden beneath his shirt. The bar fell silent. Diesel read aloud, "Richard Dawson, 3rd Battalion, 5th Marines, Vietnam, 1968. No one laughed now. From the edge of the crowd, a younger biker stepped forward. "Dawson, my dad served under you. Timothy Reynolds. He said you carried him through hell." Rick's eyes narrowed. "Searching? Tim. Radio op from K-Sun. Brave kid." The biker nodded, voice cracking. "He made it back because of you." In that moment, the atmosphere shifted again, this time permanently. These weren't just bikers anymore. They were witnesses to something greater than reputation. They had looked at Rick and seen an old man. Now they saw a Marine, a rescuer, a survivor. And for the first time in years, Rick Dawson was not invisible. He was remembered not through medals or stories, but through the silent reverence that filled that bar like a prayer unspoken. As the last tool clicked into place and the bicycle gleamed like new, Diesel disappeared briefly into his office. When he returned, all conversation in the bar stopped once more. In his hands was a folded leather vest, brand new, but different from the others in the room. It bore the familiar iron talons emblem on the back. Yet above it, where names usually went, was a single word stitched in bold. Golden thread. Respect. He approached Rick Dawson and stood face to face with the man who had once braved jungles and firefights, but now simply endured the battles of growing old in silence. "We can't patch you into this club," Diesel said quietly, "but we can honor you in our own way." Without fanfare, he placed the vest over Rick's shoulders. It fit perfectly, like it had been waiting for him all along. Rick didn't say a word. He didn't have to. His trembling hand moved slowly across the embroidered word respect, and in that moment, the eyes of every biker lowered not in shame, but in deep acknowledgement. Rick had walked in carrying groceries and broken chains. Now, he stood as something more. A man finally seen somed. A warrior no longer overlooked, and around him, those who had once laughed now stood still, understanding that some honors are not asked for, they are earned in silence. Rick Dawson didn't ask for a parade, and he certainly didn't expect an escort. But as he wheeled his newly restored bicycle out of the Iron Talons bar, the low rumble of motorcycles igniting behind him said everything he needed to hear. One by one, the bikers, once mockers, now loyal companions, fell in line behind him, forming a roaring column of chrome and thunder. Together, they rolled down Main Street like a living tribute. Pedestrians stopped in awe. Drivers pulled over. Some took off their hats as the line passed. Rick, wearing his new leather vest emblazoned with respect, sat a little taller in the saddle of his rebuilt bike. The battered veteran with a grocery basket and rusted chain had become the unexpected centerpiece of a convoy no one could ignore. When they arrived at his small apartment complex, the motorcycles parked in formation. As Rick dismounted, the bikers created a silent corridor on either side of the walkway. No speeches were made, no orders given, just a quiet nod from each rider as Rick passed through them. At the door, Diesel stepped forward one last time. "You need anything? Anything at all?" he said gruffly. "You come to us." Rick nodded, the lump in his throat making words impossible. Before turning away, Diesel added, "And if that bike ever acts up again, you bring it straight back here." The next morning, Rick rode past the bar as usual. But something had changed. A small team was mounting a polished brass plaque beside the entrance. When he returned from the store, he stopped to read it. "Here, respect is earned and remembered." From that day forward, every time Rick passed the Iron Talons, engines were cut, conversations ceased, and every member stood at attention, no command needed, no explanation given. They had witnessed something bigger than age, beyond appearances. They had seen a man's quiet dignity, and from that moment on, they would never overlook it again. From that day forward, Rick Dawson's daily rides were never the same. The quiet veteran who once pedaled unnoticed down cracked sidewalks and passed indifferent faces now moved through town as a living symbol of dignity. Whenever he passed by the Iron Talons clubhouse, the transformation was immediate and powerful. Conversations halted, engines went silent, helmets came off, and every biker, from the youngest prospect to Diesel himself, stood in silent respect until Rick was out of sight. No one ever announced this ritual. It simply happened, again and again. And it wasn't just the bikers who changed. The community began to see him differently too. Where once he had been invisible, now people stopped to greet him. Children waved. Shopkeepers carried his bags without being asked. Young veterans began approaching him with hesitant questions. And Rick, though a man of few words, always took the time to listen, to nod, to remind them quietly that they mattered. For Rick, the vest bearing the word respect became more than a gift. It became a shield, a quiet declaration that his years of service, his sacrifices, and his silence had not been in vain. And the bicycle, once barely held together, now rolled smoothly through the streets, bearing not just groceries, but a message that true honor lives in action. Not applause, Sometimes, Rick would pause at a small brass plaque mounted beside the bar's entrance. It read, "Here, respect is earned and remembered." He would place his hand on it for just a moment before continuing on his way, the wordless salute of passing bikers echoing louder than any ceremony. Because respect, when real, doesn't need to be spoken. It's lived, quietly just like Rick. The story of Rick Dawson began as a quiet tragedy, a forgotten veteran, a broken bicycle, and a crowd that chose to mock instead of help. But what unfolded became something far greater. A transformation not just of one moment, but of an entire community's understanding of what respect truly means. For Rick, the events at the Iron Talons bar weren't about redemption. He hadn't come looking for recognition or pity. All he wanted was to get home with his groceries. But in witnessing his perseverance, his silence, and his grace under humiliation, those around him were forced to see something they'd long overlooked. The quiet strength of someone who had given more than most would ever know. And that's why his story resonated far beyond that bar. It reminded people that not all heroes wear medals on their chest or speak about what they've endured. Some simply ride their bicycles every week, teach others through patience, and carry their scars with quiet pride. Rick's presence became a living reminder that true honor isn't loud, it's lived. And for every veteran who's ever been looked past, for every elder who's been dismissed as just an old man, Rick Dawson now stood as a symbol. That service doesn't expire, and neither does the dignity of those who gave. In his silence, Rick had taught an entire town how to see again and how to stand. Not just for him, but for all those like him. In front of the Iron Talons clubhouse, just to the right of the weathered wooden doors, now stands a small but powerful tribute, a brass plaque, polished to a quiet gleam. Its message is simple, yet unforgettable. Here, respect is earned and remembered. That plaque didn't come with ceremony or media fanfare. No ribbon was cut, no speech given, but it changed everything. It marked a turning point, not only for Rick Dawson, but for every veteran who might one day pass that same threshold. It told the world that this place, once known for grit and thunder, now understood something deeper. That honor doesn't always arrive wearing a uniform or medals. Sometimes, it limps in with a trembling hand, hidden beneath a faded jacket and worn-out dog tags. For Rick, that plaque wasn't just metal on a wall. It was a quiet acknowledgement that his story mattered, that his service had not been forgotten. And each time he rode past, he would glance toward it, not for praise, but as a shared promise that what was nearly lost that day, the dignity of a veteran, would now be protected and passed on, because sometimes it takes just one moment and one man to teach an entire town the true weight of the word respect. The transformation of Rick Dawson from a mock stranger to a figure of quiet reverence wasn't something scripted or staged. It happened because a group of people chose to look again beyond the wrinkles, the worn bicycle, and the faded cap to see the man beneath. And in doing so, they rediscovered something many of us forget in the rush of modern life. Dignity is not always loud, but it is always present. Rick never raised his voice. He didn't demand anything, but his patience, his calm under ridicule, and his unwavering pride in his past spoke louder than any speech ever could. That silence, so often mistaken for weakness, was, in fact, the strongest thing in the room. The lesson is simple, but powerful. We must learn to pause before we judge, to listen before we laugh, and to recognize that the people we pass by every day may carry stories that would humble us if only we knew them. Rick's story is not just about veterans, it's about all of us. About how easy it is to overlook someone until the moment we truly see them, and how respect, once given genuinely, can ripple outward and transform a community. If this touched your heart, leave a comment below. Tell us about someone you once misjudged, or someone who taught you the meaning of respect. And don't forget to subscribe for more stories that remind us true character needs no introduction.